I need to add a new. Why are they dismissing Skyrim in that chat? Hey, how are you? Oh, heck yeah, man. Yeah, I'd love to have you on the show at some point, Ryan, honestly. I think that would be great. Let's see, what do I need to share the live stream with Discord and whatnot, and hmm, let's see, live, and I gotta send this out to one more place, and then we should be good. Actually, no, the Discord is, I mean, not the Discord, I mean Kick. I have a Kick server, but the Kick is honestly pretty dead. I need to kind of revive it. All right, let me see. What's the live chat saying? Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'd love to have you on the show, Ryan. And hey, Rena, how are you? Thanks so much for coming out, guys. As of right now, let me take a look. I am at 199 subs, so I am one away from my goal. Once I actually reach 200, I have a couple announcements to make and um, just a thank you as well. So honestly, right now, I'll do thank you. So thank you guys so much. Honestly, I'm literally one away from 200 subscribers. So yeah, no, I've literally been doing this show for almost 2 years now. So it's kind of crazy. 200 subscribers in 2 years. Yeah, no, this is honestly really great. So thank you guys so much. It really does mean a lot. Um, I might do it. I'm thinking about doing a giveaway at 200 subscribers, just like a small one, not nothing compared to the last one where I gave out like those monster my pocket cards. I'm thinking about doing something kind of special for this one, where there's only going to be one winner for it. So stay tuned for that. And then and then there is also going to be a new series started. Elizabeth Allen. Hey, Elizabeth, how are you? What up, nerd? Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm gonna be actually getting a new setup here really soon because this is actually like, this room technically belongs to my dad. Like, he doesn't sleep in it or anything, but um, he is going to be using it as his nautical room. So as you can kind of tell, hold on, let me move a bit of everything here. Oh gosh, did I just click off? There we go. Okay. He kind of has some things kind of set up. This back room's a mess though. He, yeah, nautical stuff. He's got that's his treasure chest from Pirates of the Caribbean. That's Dead Man's chest and everything. You can see his CD collection in the background. But no, he was originally planning on using this room for something. Then I kind of used it for my thing. And sorry about that. There's just something weird on my computer. But he wants this room back, so I'm gonna give it back to him. So I'm gonna need to find a new place to film. Honestly, um, yeah, no. So this set's not gonna be here for much longer. I do. Ugh. Yep, my one friend Jonna made this for me. He's so friendly and happy. Let me get him up close for the camera. He's got some hair on him. He's just been kind of sitting with my other guys, but he's cute. I need to get this fixed up here. Okay. There we go. That's good enough. Hmm. I'm sure we could probably work something out. If you want to send me that, guys. I don't know who did it, but we are officially at 200 subscribers. So honestly, thank you guys so much for all your support and everything, and helping me get this far. And it's great. It's great. Yep, I got that. Yep, this was on our little store that we had for a little while. I'm hoping that they can get these up again and running because these are really nice. But yeah, we are officially at 200 subscribers. Do like a 200 subscriber special, like Q&A or something, and I'm gonna be doing a giveaway as well at some point here. Um, I'm really hoping that they can get those patches up, by the way, though, at some point. But I'm gonna be doing a special giveaway. I'm gonna be doing a live Q&A sometime this week, probably on not Monday, probably Tuesday or Wednesday, and a new series, guys. It's officially 200 subscribers, so now I can announce the new series. I am going to react to paranormal videos, encrypted related videos that people have sent me and posted on YouTube and all that stuff. So, and just kind of to get like my intake on them. No, I'm not No Chills. I'm not oh, who's another good one? Yeah, I'm not Chills. I'm not Sir Spooks, but I think it would be fun to do because they seem to have a good time and reviewing the videos, and I think it would be kind of fun too. So I'm going to be reviewing cryptid and paranormal videos that you guys send me. Um, yeah, you guys send me ones that I find online. I'm probably going to be doing those like once a week. It's not replacing cryptid ratings. I know I haven't done one of those in a while, but um, because I've just been busy and everything. But we're going to do another cryptid ratings here soon. So there's going to be cryptid ratings, Cryptocast live streams, and I don't know what to call this new series. If you guys have a name idea for the new series that I'm going to be doing, let me know because I'll give you guys a shout out or something as well if you help me figure it out. So, yep, it's just going to be me reacting to these different videos and all that. So, um, I'm looking forward to doing that, and I hope you guys will enjoy that as well. Just to kind of like give my little intake on what it is. Um, so yeah, be sure to send me my media, like the media that you guys want me to review, like whether it be on Twitter, like any video that you guys find. It could be even a personal video that you have where you experience something cryptid related or paranormal. You guys can reach out to me through all my social medias in the link in the description below. I just made a brand new subreddit for this channel. So if you guys post videos and stuff in that subreddit channel, I'll be able to see it and I'll be able to review it. And now it doesn't have to be just videos or whatnot. It can be pictures, audio clips, all that stuff too. So if you guys just send me any kind of media that you want me to review. I'll review it for this new series. But yeah, like I said, it needs a name. So if you guys can help me think of a name, I will credit whoever I think has the best name. Ooh, I'm excited. I remember that first ghost encounter that I had on here, where that little white thing just falls down, and yeah, I know. That's still there, and I think it's like one of my most watched videos on my channel, honestly. So, um, yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to this. Now, the road to 300 begins. That's going to be a long time coming, but I really, really do appreciate your support, guys. That's awesome that you guys helped me get this far. So, thank you all so much. Um, yeah, no, that's honestly just crazy. 200 subscribers. I honestly never thought I'd honestly make it that far. But yeah, now the road to 300 begins. So, um, I guess we're gonna get started here. But yeah, be on the lookout. Tuesday most likely is going to be my 200 subscriber Q&A special. And who knows, there might be a little ghost hunt in there. You never know. Could happen. Could happen. And yeah, and then the giveaway will be announced during that live stream, and then an official video for entry will be after that. So, um, yeah, you guys have something to look forward to for Tuesday night. Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. So, as you can tell, guys, we are going to be reading. It's still mirrored for me. I'm still not used to this. We're going to be reading this book today, Ghost of St. Charles. Now, the author of this book, believe it or not, he actually came into my work the other day, and I work at a thrift shop, so I mean, I follow his Facebook and everything, so he walked in and like he looks really familiar. And then I'm like, wait a minute, and sure enough, it was him. He had a St. Charles Ghost Tour shirt on and everything, and I introduced myself, and he was a really nice guy. He said next time if he comes in or something and I see him, um, he's gonna autograph my book. So that's really awesome. I actually found this book there as well, so it's kind of cool. I say a lot, guys. I'm so sorry, but I believe. Hey, Jules, was I at page 37? I think I was at page 37. Yes, I was. I was actually at page 37. So we're going to be reading about some more ghosts in St. Charles. Now, we're not going to get through all of this today. There's probably going to be like one, maybe two more parts to this. And I know I said I would do this one earlier, but I just been like so flooded with like work and everything in the holiday season, and I legit have just been stressed to hell and back lately. So I've been trying to deal with that as well, and my sleep schedule's all thrown off. So that's why I haven't done it for a while, guys, and I'm so sorry for that. But we're doing part two right now, and part three and part four, and possibly part four if we finish it in part three, will be coming up very, very soon. So, um, well, sooner than that because next week, I might have to work something out with you, Ryan. If you'd want to maybe guest star sometime next week. If not, I have a plan. I was gonna do a talking about the prophecies of Nostradamus. I recently bought a book that talks about like all of his prophecies and everything, and ones that have come true and ones that have yet to come true. And keep in mind, this book was like written like the 80s or something, so this was like pre 9/11 when like his 9/11 conspiracy happened and everything. So it's a dated book, but it's still a good book. So we're going to be reacting and reading some of those theories that he came up with, um, and maybe some of the like inspiration for some of these as well. So, yeah, no, Ryan, I'll reach out to you if you want to do a live stream next week or in a couple weeks or something or whenever you're free, man. But and Elizabeth, we still got to do our live stream on the Hoyubachu Forest. We still need to do that. Maybe, I guess, next time you're on break or something, like spring break or something, or whenever you're off next, we can do the Hoyubachi Forest one because I still haven't done like any research on that yet. I mean, I know a good amount about it already, but not too much. So we'll still have to do our thing. Now that you've reached 200, are you gonna gift us with that? Oh my gosh. Rena, you really want me to release that karaoke that I accidentally played during that stream, don't you? Who knows? Maybe during the Q&A, maybe during the Q&A, but it'll just be one song. One song. All right, so we're gonna start reading this book. I got really, really sidetracked talking about all this. So the last showboat, the Goldenrod, that's what this chapter's called. I cannot talk tonight like I legit can't talk every night. When the showboat rounded the bend, you could hear the calliope playing, and it stirred the blood. It was the boat's ballyhoo, advertisement and come on, suggestive of amusement to come. I got the population in the mood to be at the show. There was hardly a spot in the little town where I lived that the sound of the calliope didn't reach. After all these years, I can still recall in my mind's ear the thrilling sound. Eyewitness account of the arrival of the goldenrod. Showboats, also called floating theaters, floating operas, or boat shows, were theaters on boats bring entertainment to small towns of the Midwestern and Southern states. The showboats flourished during two great eras. The first began in the 1830s and ended with the outbreak of the Civil War. The second era began in the 1870s and continued into the 1940s. The first showboats were family-owned, serving isolated river towns. They were modest crafts of simple construction with seating for between 100 and 300 people. So these are tiny boats compared to modern-day cruise ships. They did not carry passengers or transport goods, only culture and entertainment. British-born actor William Chapman Sr. created the first showboat in Pittsburgh in 1831. It was named the Floating Theater. The Chapman boat floated down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers tying up for one-night performances at river landings anywhere an audience could be found. He and his nine-person family served as the entire cast and crew. Admission to the show was sometimes accepted in the form of eggs, chickens, or other foodstuffs. Hell, just imagine that, like being able to, like, if you have chickens in your backyard, you just give them an egg and then you get into the show. That's good payment right there. My hair's a mess. I'm so sorry, guys. Other side, I keep forgetting this shit's me hurt. Edna Ferber, in her book Showboat, published in 1926, described the excitement. Now the crowd was drifting down to the landing as the showboat lights began to glow. Twilight was coming on the landing, up the riverbank, sauntering down the road, everybody came the farm hands, the river folk, the curious, the idle, the amusement hungry, snatches of song, feet shuffling upon the wharf boards, a banjo twanging. The showboat had finally come to town. And yeah, that's from the woman's book, Edna Ferber. By all accounts, the Goldenrod was the largest and finest showboat ever to travel the inland waterways. It launched in 1909 and is reported to be the last showboat built. Constructed by the Pope Dot Company of Parksville, West Virginia for W.R. Markle, it cost $75,000, which honestly back then in 1909, $75,000 is like double, not even triple. Like, actually, no, it's probably like that's like well into the $1 million, actually, probably nowadays. I mean, I'm not good with my math and everything, so I'm not entirely sure, but it's a lot more than it is today. I mean, $75,000 still is a lot. Don't get me wrong, but compared to what it's worth now, compared to back then, it's not. It doesn't hold a candle to it. So where was I? So it measured 200 feet long and 45 feet wide. On the outside, it was the least ornate of all the showboats, but on the inside, the Goldenrod was the envy of every other floating theater. The auditorium was 162 feet long and was furnished with 21 red velour upholstered boxes on two levels. There were 14 majestic there were 1,400 seats on the main floor. It was modeled after the Majestic Theater in Denver, Colorado, and boasted more than 2,100 electric lights arranged in dramatic clusters. Full-length mirrors made the space appear to be larger, while gilt friezes, rich red draperies, and bright plush carpets reinforced the illusion of opulence. The greatest showboat owner of the era, Markle, was a colorful sort, a gambler turned entrepreneur. He financed the Goldenrod and two other boats, the Grand Floating Palace and the Sunny South, with his poker winnings. The boat was originally named Markle's New Showboat, but on the advice of his sister it was soon renamed Goldenrod. It was equipped with hot and cold running water, steam heating for the winter, and a cooling system for the summer. The Calliope served as a condenser and produced the vessel's drinking water. Electric energy was generated by the towboat's steam engine. It is said that when Edna Ferber first saw the boat, she fell in love with it, and it inspired her to write her book, Showboat. It's more likely that Ferber's book is actually based on the time she spent traveling. Um, where was I? With the James Adams Floating Theater. She later wrote, "Those 4 days in the James Adams Floating Theater comprised the only showboat experience I ever had." So someone's not telling the full truth here. The Goldenrod Showboat era, circa 1910, photo courtesy of Missouri State Archives, and there is the Goldenrod Showboat right there. In 1913, Markle lost the boat by foreclosure, and it was sold at auction for $11,000. It was purchased by Ralph Emerson, and in 1922 he sold it to Captain Bill Menke and his brother Charles Menke. While managed by the Menke brothers, the Goldenrod enjoyed a number of productive seasons, including 2 summers in 1930 and 1931 at Aspinwall, Pennsylvania. For more than 15 years, the Goldenrod visited at least 15 states each year. In a newspaper interview, Captain Bill Menke talked of the 1924 route. We would go from Pittsburgh to Fairmont on the Monongahela, and then down to the Ohio to Cairo, Illinois, and up the Illinois River returning to Cairo. We would go north as far as St. Paul, then down the Mississippi again, up to the Missouri to St. Charles, Kansas City, and Omaha. The last leg took us down the Missouri and Mississippi to New Orleans. In 1910, 21 showboats ran the river circuits. By 1928, this number had dwindled to 11, and by 1938 only 5 remained. The Depression, automobiles, and motion pictures all contributed to the decline. By the early 1940s, the days of the showboat were all but over. Well, if you really think about it, we technically have showboats still to this day. But I mean, like in the form of cruise ships and all that. So, like if you go board a cruise ship, they take you to port and everything, and they like on board they have like shows and performances for you and everything. So, in a way, we technically still have um, showboats to this day, but not as they were back then. Obviously, food for thought. In the summer of 1937, the Goldenrod went to St. Louis for repairs and remained moored at the Locust Street Landing by 1950. It had been partially sunk and salvaged twice. Shows were still being staged, and for an admission fee of 75 cents, St. Louis playgoers could board the boat and sass the actors on stage. Kind of sounds like an interactive show, honestly, like Rocky Horror Picture Show that they do here. On June 1st, 1962, a fire caused by an electrical problem all but destroyed the superstructure of the auditorium and caused severe damage to the entire structure. However, the vessel refused to die. The Goldenrod was purchased by a group of St. Louis businessmen who restored it to its original glory and beyond. Plush carpeting was laid in the auditorium, this time with cabaret seating under a huge crystal chandelier. Many antique appointments were salvaged from old St. Louis mansions. Brass fixtures and rails were restored or replaced as they were the tin ceiling and elaborate woodwork. A cocktail lounge was added with a small bandstand. The upstairs staterooms were converted into a buffet dining room. When this $300,000 renovation was completed, the Goldenrod had its grand reopening in May of 1965, and in 1967 it was registered as a historic landmark. Now, to give you guys kind of a picture about like how like how like honestly kind of like how recent years this has been. May 1965, my dad was 5 years old. In 1967, he was 7 years old. So this was like remodeled and everything like during his lifetime. So that's honestly really insane to really think about. From the early 1960s until about 1985, the National Ragtime Festival was staged aboard the Goldenrod, featuring many vintage jazz and ragtime bands. From 1975 to 1984, the Goldenrod was operated as a sister theater to the Heritage Square Opera House in Golden, Colorado, presenting a unique style of melodrama and vaudeville. In 1989, the boat was purchased by the city of St. Charles for $300,000, which is actually kind of ironic because that's how much money it took to repair it, and moved to the historic Missouri River town. It was restored and renovated, costing the city about $3.5 million over the next 12 years. The dinner theater continued to operate, but in 2001, the boat was again damaged when the Missouri River levels ran low, which happens a lot. The attraction was closed by the Coast Guard and deemed unsafe. The repair estimates were much higher than expected, and the city council decided to sell the boat in 2002. When no one offered to buy it, the council decided to give it away. The boat was moved to storage near the Poplar Street Bridge in downtown St. Louis, and finally it was moved to Campsville, Illinois. And now this section is called I'm legit shit you're not Victoria's Secret. Ooh. Ships are often haunted, theaters are often haunted. Put them together, and paranormal activity is almost inevitable. The goldenrod had enjoyed a long and colorful life. A ghost will be required to make its history complete. After the lights have been turned out and guests have left, is the boat really silent and empty? Many former staff members and performers say no. They claim it is haunted by the ghost of a girl in a red dress. She has been named Victoria, and she apparently has been around for many years, long before the boat came to St. Charles. Around the turn of the century, a widower. I can't talk tonight. That's a really difficult word to say when you're reading. A widower um, uh, worked on the goldenrod and was raising his only daughter on board. Reportedly, Victoria was a vivacious, outgoing young woman. She was always backstage. She performed a few small roles, but she wanted to be a star. She had a beautiful voice and, by most accounts, a stunning figure. Well, that's kind of creepy if she was a kid, if people were saying back then. She and her father lived in the staterooms where the banquet room is now located. One night, after an extremely successful performance in St. Louis, and her father had a terrible fight. There were several standing ovations, and Victoria basked in the success. She had played a minor role that evening and felt that her contribution was significant. She was tired of being a bit player. She was tired of being nothing more than an observer or understudy. She wanted to be a star. But her father said no. The widower, perhaps overprotective, would not discuss it, and Victoria stormed off the boat to sulk, walking alone on the dangerous St. Louis riverfront. She never returned. A short time later, her body was found in the river, her long hair tangled around her throat and her dress ripped, exposing her pale skin. She had been brutally attacked and beaten. The crime was never solved. The widower's spirit was broken, and from that time on he only drank heavily night after night while floating down the river. He died a short time later of heartbreak and regret. Strange stories have been whispered amongst the Goldenrod employees ever since. Doors would slam as if in anger, items moved about, sometimes objects even levitated. Actors and staff members began to report seeing a mysterious and angry woman in a red dress, perhaps Victoria, who never realized her dreams of performing on the Goldenrod during her life is producing live performances after her death. She does not seem to be malicious, she is just there roaming at all hours. Oh, guys, next chapter is my favorite one, and I have actually photographic evidence of this next one. Um, and I'm pretty sure I've shown like a lot of you guys before. Um, while the goldenrod was moored at St. Charles, as the director of the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau told the following story. I was on the boat at about 11 at night, and I was there with the general manager who also saw the ghost. We were closing the boat up, and we walked down the gangplank to the gate, and we were looking the gate, and we were locking the gate up, and we both sort of looked up. We saw the figure of a woman in a red dress, at least it appeared to be red, or a dark dress, with long brown hair peering out at us from the upper deck of the boat. It was a long dress where the shoulders were kind of puffed up. I'd say it looked like a Victorian type of dress, or at least an early 1900s type of dress. We both said, "There's nobody else on this boat." And she just looked at us and sort of turned and walked away. We were probably 50 yards away or so. It was clearly visible. In the late 1900s, the goldenrod was moved from St. Charles and stored for a short time south of the Gateway Arch, which is sort of like our state landmark, I guess. I haven't been up in it or anything, but the owner at the time said, "I have heard stories, but I've never seen Victoria myself, but apparently she is still angry and is still on board." He also reports that an electronic alarm was installed at the time. The alarm went off more than once, but shut itself off before anyone arrived. On one occasion, the alarm went off, but when the police arrived, on one occasion, wait, no, wait, can't find it. Before anyone arrived. On one occasion, the alarm went off, but when the police arrived, everything was quiet. However, during their investigations, they discovered a message someone had written "Victoria" in the dust on one of the tables in the main lounge. That's freaky. No footprints were found, and nothing else was disturbed. No one else had been in the area for a long time. Victoria may not be the only ghost on the goldenrod. During a performance, a former uh, during a performance of Forever Plaid in 1991, more than one performer reported a presence in the dressing rooms and in the wings on stage. Ironically, Forever Plaid is a story about a ghostly singing group. Servers at the dinner theater sometimes insisted that someone or something was disturbing the table settings before the patrons arrived. Other people report hearing doors slam in areas where no doors are located, and at least one employee reports being pushed by something that seemed to be rushing down a stairway toward the gangplank. Today, the fate of the goldenrod is unknown. It is believed to have been quietly destroyed and sold for scrap in 2009. The boat itself may now be nothing more than a ghost. The gaudy casinos currently located on the riverbanks of St. Charles sometimes echo the opulence of the old riverboats, but there are no steam canopies, and admission costs are slightly more than a few chickens. Fancy cars have replaced the carriages, but the food and the entertainment remain. The crowds still come from miles around to visit the St. Charles riverfront. Much has changed, and much remains the same. Perhaps some new ghosts are being created. The Goldenrod's showboat moored at Campsville, Illinois. Yep, and that's the boat right there. Now we're on my absolute favorite, favorite, favorite thing right now. The Lady in White. I have photographic evidence of this one, so it's really, really, really nice to read about. I don't like this place. I think I'll move before next month. Some of the houses are made from sod and have flowers and weeds growing out of the walls. Every time the river comes up, some of them fall down. The town smells bad. The odor from the swamp is everywhere. The doctor says if I lived farther out, it would be healthier for me. He says I need to get away from the cholera. I will sell everything. I will not have much to pack. I might even have enough money left to buy a mule. From a letter written by Hiram Berry dated September 11th, 1822, and mailed from St. Charles, Missouri to his family in St. Genevieve, Missouri. In the 1800s, life was not easy in St. Charles. In 1804, the village was reported to have about 450 inhabitants, living in generally small and poorly constructed houses. One account from the Lewis and Clark journals goes on to say, "A great majority of the inhabitants are miserably poor, sick, illiterate, and when at home excessively lazy, though they are polite, hospitable, and by no means deficient in point of natural genius. They live in a perfect state of harmony among each other and plays as implicit confidence in the doctrines of their spiritual pastor, the Roman Catholic priest, as they yield passive obedience to the will of their temporal master, the commandment. A small garden of vegetables is the usual extent of their cultivation, and this is commonly imposed on by the old men and boys. The men, in the vigor of life, consider cultivation of the earth a degrading occupation, and in order to gain the necessary substance for themselves and families, either undertake hunting voyages on their own account, or engage themselves as hirelings to such persons as possesses sufficient capital to extend their traffic. To the natives of the interior part of the country, on those voyages, in either case, they're frequently absent from their families or homes. The term of 6 or 12 or 18 months, and always subjected to severe and incessant labor, exposed to ferocity of the lawless savages, the studies of weather and climate, and dependent on chance or accidental alone for food, raiment, or relief in the event of malady. Um, these people are principally the descendants of the Canadian French, and it is not as an inconsiderable proportion of them that they can boast a small dash of pure blood of the Aborigines of America. And that is from the Lewis and Clark Journal. And sorry, that was like so hard to read. So it's old English and everything kind of sprawled in there, so I had to kind of make out what it said at times. So let's see. Hold on. There we go. Missouri was granted statehood in 1821, and by that time the population had grown to almost 4,000 people. A number of higher quality permanent buildings have been constructed, including the formidable Stone Row, the Capitol buildings, Peck Brothers Hardware, and the New Farmers Tavern, currently Dengler Tobacco. I know that place. I've never been in there, but I know the place. Don't smoke, kids. It's bad for your health. Um, Before 1850, the Newbill McEnley House, Old City Hall, also known as the Market House, and the Mother-in-Law House, which I have also paranormal evidence of in there, um, were built. St. Charles was off and running, an active and growing city. Until about 1853, the Barmeo Cemetery was located right in the middle of town, running along Main Street from about 300 to 500 South Main and up the hill to what is now 3rd Street. How many people were buried there is not known, but it could have been 300 or more. In 1850, it became inconvenient to have a necropolis in the middle of a living city, so the graveyard was moved to its current location on Randolph Street. Every effort was made to move all the bodies, but at times the records were incomplete. The first church was built in St. Charles. It was dedicated to Lieutenant Governor Manuel Perez and Father Jean Antoine Ledru on November 7th, 1791. It was named after the Cardinal Milan Charles Borromeo in the late 18th century. There were no public buildings. The church was the center of the community. Um, births and marriages were celebrated here. After Mass, there were auctions, announcements, amusements, singing, dancing, and games. Of course, services for the dead were also held here. It was a short distance away from the church to the grave sites. Tradition says that Louis Blanchette was buried beneath the church floor in 1793 alongside his Pawnee wife, Angelique. She died 3 months earlier. Reportedly, their bodies were moved to the new cemetery in 1894, but recently these graves were opened and no remains were found. In 1828, a second Barmeo church was built at North 2nd Decatur Street. At the time, Father Van Quinborn, a visiting Jesuit pastor, wrote, "The churches are in deplorable condition and threatened with ruin, for it is out of the question for these poor people to build in brick or stone, and their miserable structures cannot last more than 12 or 14 years. They look like stables." The original church was essentially abandoned at that time. In 2004, a group of volunteers began to rebuild the 18th century vertical log Barmayo church at the original site in the old cemetery. This is the first time in 200 years that a French-style vertical log building has been constructed in the area, and perhaps in all of North America. This architectural style is unique to the French in the New World. In the 17th and 18th century, although um, Pote un terre posting ground buildings were once common in French villages in the Missouri-Mississippi River Valley. Only four examples exist today. This current reproduction, like the original, was built using rot and termite-resistant cedar logs, split cedar shingles, oak roof timbers, and hand-forged iron hinges and locks, and native limestone flooring. Today, on occasion, Mass is celebrated there. In 2009, a wedding was held here, the first in almost 200 years. The building can be found on the north half of Block 28 between Jefferson and Tompkins, on the west side of the street behind the shop at 401 South Main. The main cemetery seems to have been located just uphill from the chapel, but the area immediately surrounding the church building was used as Potter's Field. People who could not afford to be buried in the main cemetery were often laid to rest here. They were often buried without a name. If they had coffins at all, they would have been wooden coffins that have long since disintegrated. About 1830, there was a report of a hunting party found in the woods. Three unidentified men had froze to death. After a time, they were never identified. All three bodies were unceremoniously tossed into a single grave. Other accounts talk of slaves, Native Americans, and poor farmers unable to afford a grave in the proper cemetery. Cemetery, simply being dumped in a hole and forgotten. Records were sloppy, and in some cases there were no records at all. One document shows payment to a group of Irish stone workers on their way to St. Louis looking for work. They were paid 10 cents for each headstone they moved to the new location. Apparently, at least this part of the cemetery, no effort was made to locate the bodies. Beyond any doubt, there were bodies left behind there. It could be as few as 10 or as many as 30. So somewhere like in between there, or even exactly, we don't know. Um, After more than 150 years, it is impossible to make a body count without excavating the entire area. In 2008, investigations brought ground-penetrating sonar into the area. Unfortunately, the results were inconclusive. Human remains tend to have the same density as the surrounding ground. They are tantalizing indications of lost grave sites, but no firm proof. In 1981, a retaining wall was being installed behind the building known as the Old Armory, or French Armory. During the excavations, the workers opened two graves. And this is a reconstruction of the Barmail Church. Just a little log church, which is really nice. I visited it multiple times. This discovery held the project up for almost 2 years. While the remains were evaluated, there was concern that the remains might have been Native American, but eventually it was determined that the remains were probably slaves. Sadly, they were placed here and forgotten. Their bones were discovered by a local general contractor when one of the workers accidentally dropped the level clanged, prompting him to look a little closer. I saw two bone ends sticking out, he said. Thinking they were animal bones, the crew dug deeper and saw a hip socket that looked human. At that point, they called the St. Charles police, who came out and took pictures. They also called a former county coroner who was filling in for the county medical examiner. The examiner identified the bones as femur bones, and he also remembered that there had once been a Barmail Church cemetery on South Main. From stories written by Edna McEnley Olson, an area historian, according to Miss Olson and Barmail burial records, the old cemetery contained the graves of early pioneer settlers, including St. Charles founder Louis Blanchette and his Native American wife Angelique. The cemetery was dedicated on December 7th, 1789, and the first Barmail church was dedicated on November 7th, 1791. The old cemetery and its graves were moved twice, first in 1831 to a cemetery at 4th and Decatur Streets, and again in 1854 to the present Bormeo Cemetery at West Randolph Street. But apparently some graves were missed, either by oversight or possibly because there were no interested surviving relatives. I had no idea that a cemetery was there, one worker said. It was a little spooky. Also, I just need to check one thing really quick. Um, my friend keeps spamming me messages, and so I need to see if it's important or not. Oh no, it's just something about a video game. Oh, thank you so much, Ryan. Yeah. Hey, next week, I'll get in contact with you, honestly. Or if you want to hit my email up as well, feel free to do that. We can do a Dogman video next week if you want, or whenever you're available. Just yeah, hit me up. All right. You're sweet, Elizabeth. Um, After digging the bones up, nobody really knew what to do with them, so St. Charles Borromeo Parish officials were called in. They suggested simply burying the bones again, and it was done. They do not accept to find any more bones since all the excavating work is finished, but the location of the two graves was measured and recorded by the director of St. Charles County Historical Society. We knew there was a cemetery there, but we didn't know exactly where it was, he said. Apparently, it goes back under the alley. The bones were found close to the alley that runs between Main and 2nd Streets, near the corner of Main and Jackson Streets. They are still there today. Oh, thanks for coming out, Jules. I really appreciate it. I'm just checking out how much is left of this book. The Tombstone Maker's Home. One of the many interesting historical buildings on the grounds of the former graveyard is located at 337 South Main. It was built in 1870 by Joseph May, a stonecutter. In other words, he was a tombstone maker. There are dramatic Corinthian columns at the front of the building and at the entranceway. Sills are fine marble, unlike the other buildings up and down Main Street. All of the gingerbread on this building is carved stone, not wood. One of the window sills on the second floor is broken off. It is clearly made from stone. According to neighborhood traditions, the marble entranceway is made from tombstones that were spelled wrong or never picked up. More likely, Joseph simply had the material on hand and wanted to put an attractive entranceway on the building. If that is not enough strangeness, the floor inside the building is slanted from front to back. Almost 10 degrees, Joseph's workshop was in the back of the building, and when a marker was complete, he would simply slide it down the incline out the front door for the presentation and delivery inside the buildings like it's a crazy house. The walls and the floor don't match. Often people um, report feeling report a feeling of nausea or dizziness. Many people cannot stay in the building for very long, and it's actually easier to walk out of the building than in. When you are walking out, you are walking downhill. It is an unconventional building, and its history, a tombstone maker's workshop on the grounds of an old graveyard, is one of the mysteries within a greater enigma. A letter from home. In 1822, Hiram Berry wrote a letter to his family in St. Genevieve, Missouri, almost 50 years before Horace Greeley advised young men to go west. Hiram moved into a rough and undeveloped western place. Life in the town was hard for everyone. People were born here and people died here. According to Hiram's letter, he was not happy or healthy. He was probably a victim of the cholera epidemic, which was really prominent at the time. Hiram was not an educated man, but he wrote a sensitive and eloquent letter. He talked of conditions in St. Charles. He said that the town smelled bad because of the nearby swamp. He mentioned the cholera, and at least one account talked of a mass grave containing perhaps 40 bodies. The mass grave, if existed, was in the swamp and has certainly been destroyed by the repeated flooding. Toward the end of Hiram's letter, his tone changed. He talked of a woman that lives down the march. She was 23 years old, had been married a little more than a year, and was pregnant. He spoke of her affectionately and described the birth of a beautiful baby boy. She did not have a hard time, but fever set in, and the evening before she died, she got delirious. She did not know anyone for 24 hours before she died. Wow, actually think about that. Like being in a room, you're just so delirious you don't know who you're talking to or who everyone is. She was so proud of her baby, she never thought she would die. Um, Never said anything, but she wanted the priest. He came the day she got delirious. There was a large funeral. People came in carriages for miles around. Hiram observed it was as if she were famous or a very big man. Like Hiram, the couple was very poor. Beyond doubt, she was laid to rest in the potter's field surrounding the church. She was buried in her wedding dress, the only nice dress she owned. He described her lying in her rude coffin, her head turned slightly to one side, a smile on her lips, wearing her white dress trimmed with cream lace. In very simple words, Hiram made it clear he was very fond of this woman. Her name, the name of her son, and the location of her grave are lost, but turmoil, sickness, and perhaps guilt are factors that often leave a restless spirit. Over the years, a number of people report that while standing on the sidewalk that was once the entrance to the cemetery, looking uphill, they see a woman in a long white dress standing quietly, perhaps praying in front of the reconstructed church. They approach, she looks up, looks at them, and then fades away or glides out of sight behind the building. This apparition, the lady in white, is the best documented and perhaps most frequently glimpsed ghost visitors in the area. She is also perhaps the most romantic. She's always seen right around sunset and fades away with the fading daylight. Some say it looks as if she's holding a glass of wine. Others remark that she smiles but still seems so sad. Hiram closed his letter by saying he was in trouble and must get out of town before it got worse. He did not mention the type of trouble he was experiencing, but reading between the lines, it is possible to guess. Hiram was leaving town because he was not the woman's husband. Um, was the father of the child. We can add a bit more sorrow, heartbreak, romance, and sadness to the story, more factors that often leave a restless spirit. Even at that time, St. Charles was producing fine wine. Visitors sometimes spoke of fine local beers, but the excellent local wines were quite well known and quite popular. We can imagine Hiram pouring 2 glasses of wine, one for himself and one for the woman he would never see again. Perhaps in a private ritual, he finished his glass and poured the other on her grave before moving on into history. Nothing more is known about Hiram, as far as we know. This was the last letter he wrote. It seems that he did leave town. Did he die somewhere in the wilderness? Did the husband or authorities catch up with him? Perhaps somewhere along the trail there is another ghost, a melancholy man standing quietly, a glass of wine in his hand, looking for a pretty lady in a long white dress. All right. This next chapter's short, and then I'll be on page 60. So I'm on 53 right now, so we got like 7 more pages. Until the repentant sheriff, and now I've investigated this area before, but I haven't found anything myself, but this is reportedly haunted as well. But Yeah, back to Lady in White, I actually do have photographic evidence of her and everything, so I can possibly show that again at some point. I know I've showed it on here before, but I don't know why I'm holding these. But until about 1906, the gallows were located near Main Street, just behind the courthouse. According to reports, the last public execution in St. Charles took place in 1904. The information about the execution is incomplete, but it is possible that the last two men executed here may not have been guilty of the crimes that resulted in their hanging. These men were not nice people, nor were they popular people, but evidence suggests that they were finally caught at something, and the law decided to take care of the problem once and for all. According to accounts, Charles May and John Taylor were local troublemakers. Every time they came into town, there was trouble, and they spent more than one night cooling off in the local jail following a bar fight or some other drunken brawl. Charlie and Johnny were quick to use their fists, and often quick to use a knife. They were ready to take credit for all the violence in the town, and they have even been responsible for most of it. On a cold January night in 1902, there was a fire in a small farmhouse just west of St. Charles. In that fire, a young couple and their 8-month-old child died. During the investigation, it was found that the man and his wife had been shot and killed, and the child was left to die in her bed. Charlie and Johnny were in town that night, and some say they talked of that smart mouth woman never sassing them again. They may or may not have been responsible, but in any case, they were convicted of the murders. And this is the gallows, a picture of the gallows that were here in St. Charles back in the early 1900s. And that it's, yeah, public hanging. In the early 20th century, St. Charles was more than a small town, but still retained many characteristics of a frontier settlement. There were new people, buildings, and new problems. On occasion, justice was swift. On April 7th, 1904, the men were put to death. Many people attended, a few people fighting over the best viewing spots. A century earlier, this type of behavior was not rare. A good hanging was the only entertainment for miles around, but this was 1904. The World's Fair was going on just across the river. At the sight of the gallows, people report a heaviness in the air, a spiritual pressure, and sometimes nausea. There were executions here. There could be ghosts, or perhaps just knowing what happened here has an impact on personal feelings. The area is currently a landscaped walkway. Many interesting pictures have been captured, and some audio recordings could be interpreted as crowd noises. But in general, the area is too cluttered. It is impossible to tell the ghosts from the natural phenomenon. However, this is not the story of two criminals. This is a story of an ethical man, a man who performed a service required in spite of his personal convictions. Ebenezer Curtis was that man. Mr. Curtis was called upon to be the executioner. His job was to stand on the gallows and pull the pin, a small metal bar that released a trap under the condemned men. From new black suits to grisly autopsies, a successful hanging is a result of experience and precise planning. There is a science to a hanging. If a man fell too far, his head would be ripped off. If the condemned didn't fall far enough, he would strangle to death, instead of having his neck broken for a nice clean kill. The execution took place without major incident, but everyone was aware of the potential psychological harm that the result from viewing a hanging. When the victim was well known, the public condemnation of the accused could be devastating. If the accused was unpopular, public antipathy could be overwhelming. When the townspeople were stirred, authorities often had to resort to extreme measures to prevent a lynching. On this occasion, one witness remarked, "We came to where a crowd had assembled. After a time, officers brought about two men and hanged them. My father said, 'I brought you to see the hanging to impress on your mind what happens to people who do not do is exactly what you are told.' I took months to forget that horrible sight, and for weeks I woke up covered in sweat of terror. I could see them twitch and his tongue hanging out and his protruding eyes." This unidentified eyewitness was not the only person affected by the event. Ebenezer Curtis lived down the street in his upstairs apartment. A few months later, he committed suicide. He shot himself in the apartment, but seems to have flinched at the last second. His body was found in the morning against a gate in a narrow walkway leading to the apartment. The site remains a drastic, somewhat eerie place today. You can stand and look down the dark, narrow brick corridor. Often a cool breeze is said to Also, a cool breeze, some believe it's a cold wind, will drift down and brush against your skin. The opening at the far end places an interesting frame around the steeple of the church located 1 block to the west. A colony of bats also lives in this corridor, adding one more eerie element to the overall picture. Unexplained electrical readings, EMFs, have been recorded more than once. People hear gunshots and mysterious groans echoing down the path. On one occasion, in the background, audio track of a video recording, a clear voice was heard whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." In 2008, a documentary on the ghosts in the area was being filmed. The film team was using remote reading infrared thermometer to measure the air temperature down the corridor. While the camera was running to the temperature on the device dropped 13 degrees, and then went back to normal as if someone or something had passed through the beam of the device. There have been photographs of shadow people here. There are unexplained bursts of energy, and on occasion, cameras and cell phones will fail. The batteries will be completely drained. When the device is removed from the area, the battery is restored. And right here, this is the alleyway. And that is the bookstore right there as well. It's right outside the bookstore. Perhaps the entity in the area uses the power in the batteries to obtain energy to manifest. Sightings are reported here several times a year. The strongest manifestations seem to be in July and August. This is a popular site with ghost hunters and paranormal investigators. As a result, hundreds of photographs and multiple energy readings have been gathered. The area beyond a doubt is active, but there may be more here than just old pitiful Ebenezer Curtis after all. The narrow corridor is damp, mysterious, and spooky. It does not take much of an imagination to experience ghosts here. The murder of Elijah Lovejoy. Number 310 South Main Street has a history of violence and death. Seth Millington, brother of Jeremiah Millington, built the house in 1799. It is typical of English architecture, and the bricks are handmade. In October of 1837, Elijah Lovejoy was scheduled to preach for the Reverend Mr. Campbell, the Presbyterian minister of St. Charles, while in St. Charles. Lovejoy stayed with his mother-in-law here at 310 South Main. Conditions in the area were tense, and the anti-abolitionist faction made it clear that he was not welcome. The trouble began on Sunday when the services concluded in Mr. Lovejoy's own words, "I preach in the morning and at night." After the audience was dismissed at night, and when all had left the church but Mr. Campbell, his brother-in-law, Mr. Copes, and myself, a young man came in, and passing by me, slipped the following note in my hand: "Mr. Lovejoy, be watchful as you come from church tonight. A friend." Lovejoy and his family walked from the church to the residence without incident. It was about 9 o'clock, and it was a very dark night. The rooms were on the second floor with a dry goods store below. Outside, a flight of stairs provided access to the apartment. Elijah and Reverend Campbell sat conversing quietly, but about at 10 o'clock there was a noise at the foot of the stairs. Lovejoy called down through the door and asked what was wanted. The answer came, "We want to see Mr. Lovejoy. Is he in?" "Yes, I am in. Yes, I am here," Lovejoy said. A mob immediately rushed up to the room. Two men forced their way in and seized Elijah. "We want you downstairs, damn you," they said, and they dragged Lovejoy out by his feet, head bouncing violently on each step, leaving significant bloodstains. His wife attempted to stop them, and at one point, one Southern gentleman actually drew his dirk and threatened her. Her reply was to strike him in the face and push her way past. "You will have to take me before you can have him," she screamed. Her energetic measures, seconded by those of her mother and sister, induced the assailants to release Elijah. They brought the wounded man back upstairs. A short time later, the mob returned, breaking into the room again. Mrs. Lovejoy's health was delicate, and she was 7 months pregnant at the time. Her situation was truly distressing. The brutal attackers were indifferent to her situation, to her cries and shrieks. They may have succeeded in the second attempt, but Reverend Campbell helped to force the mob from the room, and the house was cleared a second time. The mob did not leave, however. The men were armed with pistols and dirks, and at least one pistol was discharged, but no one was hit. They rushed up the stairs a third time, and one man approached with a note signed "A Citizen of St. Charles." The note was short, and it ordered Mr. Lovejoy to leave the town the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning. He said no answer was expected and immediately left the room. Elijah took a pencil, wrote a short note. "I've already taken my passage in the stage to leave tomorrow morning, but at least by 9 o'clock, Elijah P. Lovejoy." The note was carried downstairs and read to the mob. The men argued among themselves for a bit, but after a time most of them drifted off to continue their discussion at Eckert's Tavern, a short distance up the street. With the efforts of the mob diverted, the family made their way out of the house and walked about a mile to the home of Major George Sibley. He provided a horse, and they made their way back to Alton, thoroughly exhausted and utterly unfit. Elijah Parrish Lovejoy was a Presbyterian minister, journalist, and newspaper editor. A short time after the incident in St. Charles, he was murdered by a mob for his abolitionist views. After graduation from college, Lovejoy moved on to Alton, Illinois, where he became editor of the Alton Observer. On 3 occasions, his printing press was destroyed by pro-slavery factions. On November 7, 1837, he was shot 5 times with a shotgun. He died on the spot. Lovejoy was hailed as a martyr by abolitionists across the country. This murder started a panic in the city of Alton. Banks failed and property values shrank. Newspapers all over the country attacked the city for allowing this event to occur. This event inspired later abolitionists, including John Brown, and some historians believe this was the spark that ignited the Civil War. No one was ever officially accused of the Lovejoy murder, but according to one legend, a curse followed many of the ringleaders to their deaths. One of the leaders was stabbed to death in St. Louis, another was killed in a freak steamboat accident, another died in a brawl in an Ohio prison, and one was brutally beat to death in New Orleans. Other reports that over the years, most of the members of the mob met violent, disgraceful deaths. Ironically, the business in the lower level at 310 Main is now a print shop, which I know where that is. In the front window is an antique press, identical to the press used by Elijah. The stairs in the back have been rebuilt, and according to the current owners, the old stairs were covered in bloodstains and cannot be removed. On occasion, while working late, the current owners hear the sounds of a violent crowd, and once or twice a year, the old printing press will move as if trying to print one more copy of the old newspaper. Other odd noises have been heard, but Elijah made his way east to die in another place. If Elijah's spirit still wanders, it is probably not here. Perhaps one ghost is enough. Ebenezer, the repentant executioner, appears to still be hanging around. Strange noises are heard, and some people report feeling unfriendly energy that encourages people to do irrational things. It is mostly quiet today, but the site continues to generate reports after all these years. 310 Main Street is still making history. And with that, guys, we are on page 60 and halfway through the book. So, hey, shout out. Hey, shout out to Ectoplasmic Worms for subscribing to me on YouTube. I just got a notification, and shout out to everybody who subscribed to me today, guys. Thank you so much for helping me reach 200 subscribers. I'm going to continue this book more in the future. I'm on page 60, so we're halfway done. So I'd say like 2 more readings of this book should finish it. So yeah, thank you guys so much for helping me get to 200 subscribers. It really means a lot. There's going to be a special live Q&A on Tuesday. I'm going to probably try working on some of that new series as well sometime this week, and there's going to be a giveaway announced. So if you guys like this video, be sure to like it. You can dislike it if you dislike it. And if you're new to the channel, guys, consider subscribing if you have not already. Become a member of the Crypto Crew today. And yeah, I'm so excited to do this stream on Tuesday, and I hope that you guys will be out to join me. I'll have to get in touch with some people who want to guest star and all that. So thank you guys so much for coming out to the stream tonight. It means the absolute world, and thank you guys so much for 200 subscribers. Now the road to 300 begins. I thank you all so much for your continued support, and it means so much to me. So you guys have a great week, and I will see you all on Tuesday. Stay safe, guys, if you're going back to school as well. It's a stressful time, so be safe. And with that being